My name is Mona Fathieh, and I'm the Intercultural Counselor at Mohawk College. I'm here today for a virtual session of Chai Chats. Chai Chats is a workshop for international students where we explore various topics in psychology, giving you the chance to think about how they apply to your lives. Our topic for today is the power of our thoughts. It's hard to know for sure, but researchers tell us that we have about 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts per day. When you think about it, that's about 2,000 to 3,300 thoughts per hour. Most of our thoughts are unconscious, meaning we often don't know what they are, and we would actually have a hard time describing them. Some of our thoughts are neutral. They don't give us intense feelings. Some of our thoughts are connected to joy or other pleasant emotions, and there are thoughts that are connected to unpleasant emotions. You might ask yourself, why is all of this important? When we're feeling low or stressed, it can be hard to focus, hard to achieve our goals, and difficult to connect with others or feel productive. There is a relationship between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions or our reactions. This means the things that we think about are connected to how we feel, and the way we feel is connected to how we act or react. This is a simple diagram just to illustrate what I'm talking about. The things that we think are connected to how we feel. The way that we feel is connected to how we act or react. Knowing this is important because we can then understand why we feel the way that we do, and we also have a way to change the way that we feel. Understanding the relationship between our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions comes from a therapy model called cognitive behavior therapy. Cognitive behavior therapy is sometimes short for CBT. CBT tells us that we have certain habits of thinking that cause negative feelings. They describe these patterns as thought distortions. Thought distortions are a way of thinking that are connected to feelings of sadness, worry, shame, judgment, or low mood. I'm going to share with you a couple examples of thought distortions. In addition to sharing with you what they are, I've provided some examples. And in these examples, if you hear yourself, that's okay. I'll actually tell us a little bit after about one tool that you can use to help change the way that you think. So we're going to discuss 4 thought distortions. The first one is called all or nothing thinking. This is when you see life as extreme opposing categories, and there's no gray between these categories. Examples of this is thinking that you're either perfect or a failure. Thinking that if your boyfriend breaks up with you, that there's no one else that will care about you. You can see how this extreme opposite thinking actually causes a lot of distress because either you are a failure or you are perfect. But actually, when you realize there's a whole spectrum in between those two things. Overgeneralization is another thought distortion. This is where you take a single event and blow it out of proportion. This is where one thing occurs and you generalize it to the rest of your life. So an example of this would be, I got a 50% on one assignment, which means that I'll fail college. Or, I had an unsuccessful interview, which means I'll never find a job. Taking one or two events and then making meaning for the rest of your entire life. Filtering is the third thought distortion. That's when you focus on the negative details and block out all of the positive ones. For example, you might get mostly good feedback on a presentation that you give, but one person shares something negative. You cannot forget about that negative comment, but you seem to forget about all of the positive ones. Filtering is a habit where we actually see the negative instead of seeing the negative and the positive. The last thought distortion I wanted to share is called fortune telling. This is where you assign negative value to your future, as if you're able to predict what will happen. An example of this that I often hear is, I'm sad now, which means I'll be sad forever. Or, I don't understand this subject now, which means I'll be unsuccessful in school and unsuccessful at work. It's where you take something that's occurring now and you actually assign negative value into your future, like you're able to predict it. If you see yourself in any of these thought distortions, just realize that there's hours and hours and years of research that have gone into helping people change these negative thought distortions. I'll give you just a few tips on how you can actually do that. So the first thing you would want to do is just begin to notice when you're having these thought distortions in your own thinking pattern. Learn to identify whether or not you're having all or nothing thinking. When you begin to notice all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, filtering, or fortune telling, it gives you a chance to change the way you think. Because when those thoughts lie in the unconscious, we can't actually change them. So the first step is just begin to notice them. The second thing you can do is ask yourself if your thoughts are completely factual. And there's actually a method in cognitive behavior therapy that helps with changing your thoughts. I'll show you what it looks like. So this is called a thought record. This is obviously a simplification, but this is one that I typically use with students. In one column, you write the original thought. Maybe the thought is, I'm going to be unsuccessful with the rest of my life. Then you look for evidence to support that thought. You also look for evidence that goes against the thought. And then you weigh all the evidence that supports your thought, the evidence that goes against your thought, and you create a balanced thought. I often describe to students that it's like taking your thought into a courtroom. And in this courtroom, there are 2 lawyers and 1 judge. Each lawyer is looking for evidence. The one lawyer is looking for all of the evidence that they can find to support that your thought is true. The other lawyer is looking for all of the evidence possible to support that your thought is false. And when you take all of that evidence into consideration, the judge looks at your original thought and sees if it can be altered. So let's take the thought, my future is not going to be good. You have to ask, what is the evidence that the lawyer would find that is true? You could maybe find some evidence that says, I've had some difficulties in my life. And you can go for as long as it takes for you to find all the evidence possible. The other lawyer is looking for evidence against the thought. And so that lawyer might say, I can't predict the future. We have no way of actually knowing how things will unfold. Then the judge, who's looking for a balanced thought, will weigh all the evidence that supports and all the evidence against and see if there's a way to change your original thought to something that's more balanced. Now, if you remember at the beginning, I was telling you that there's a relationship between what you think, how you feel, and how you act. So changing our thoughts using a thought record, like I described here with the 2 lawyers and the judge, you will actually change the way that you feel. And changing the way you feel has an impact on the way that you act or react in situations. So this is all to help you see that our thoughts actually have a lot of power, but we can have control over our own thoughts so that they don't have to kind of control our lives. So I hope that you find this video helpful, and I will be back next month with another video for you on a different topic.